Yo, 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 what is going on, RoK Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are going to be touching on, one of, I'm going to be honest, almost every video and topic is exciting, but this one is, I think, just for a little bit more of educational purposes. And there was a conversation I guess more of a response that I had provided in one of the jumper chats on Discord to someone who asked the question, how do you guys go about finding whales for your jumpers, right? Is it always someone you know, or etc., or another way? And so I thought this would be a great opportunity to touch on the need or not need for having confirmed spenders or people that will spend money when they are joining into a new kingdom as part of a jumper project, and what are some of the pros and cons there, along with the mindset that players should be going in with, or at least understand why this would or would not happen. And then I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. So before we get started, as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you sub, like, ring the notification bell, and of course, if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord. You can find a link to that in the pinned comment description down below. Okay, so let me start off first with, what actually happened. And then there was a response that I want to touch on because I thought that it did a good job of highlighting a few things. So I guess before I show that, let me briefly kind of cover what I think is really important when it comes to doing something like having, I'm sure some of you have been a part of projects where they most likely have some kind of reaction role channel where you can go and maybe it'll say something to the extent of, how long have you been playing? What troop type do you plan to go? How long do you think you can play per day? And then variety, maybe some might say, what continent are you on, right? For whatever, that might be an additional. But then usually there's at least one question where it says, how much do you plan to spend? And it could be, how much do you plan to spend per month? How much do you plan to spend total? And then there's reactions that are different tier levels of spending. And this is something that I had actually attempted in my first project back in, I think it was 2020. I want to say past April, May, around there. And I later realized, and I think I may have actually done this in my first two, but I know at least one. And then the conclusion I came to is that one of the reasons why you do not want to do that is kind of multifold. See, we tried it and then we evolved it from having it public to doing it anonymously, where we had people submit a form anonymously, where the information would only come to myself and one other. And then the objective was to essentially go about distributing the spenders equally and evenly between the number of alliances you would have in said project. And we felt this was the most accurate and fair way to do it if you are going to ask people to tell you if they're spenders or not, right? And then you're only ever going to get a percentage. You're never going to get 100% of everyone to be, truthful and honest. And what we later realized is that what's to stop people from saying or reacting to one of these options, saying they're a spender, when in fact they are not? And what we realized is that this was happening every project. It just depended on the amount that it happened. Now, yes, some of the people actually did turn out to be spenders, but more often than not, I want to say at least half, if not the majority of people, were actually not spending. You see, what they were doing is they were reacting or they were submitting these forms anonymously saying they were spenders because they thought, at least a part of them, outside of anything else that they were doing it for, is that they wanted to be in the alliances with the spenders. They wanted to make sure that they were going to be a part of these spender alliances by including when they didn't realize that they were going to be with spenders regardless because we were distributing them evenly, right? So it didn't really matter. The problem is that based on their responses and based on their reactions, it inflated or made it so that the distribution was disproportionate to where, an example, let's say you had 10 people submit and you had 3 people that were real spenders and 7 people that weren't. Well, and then each of those 7 chose a different option. We're distributing based on that for fairness and equality, right, to try and have the most accurate numbers based on the information we're collecting. So you might get in a situation where you might actually have 2 real spenders that get put into one alliance and then 1 real spender in another, instead of having it where the 3 real spenders would each be in a separate alliance. Those are the types of situations, scenarios that could occur from that, and they did. And often I don't want to say often, but I think 1 to 2 times we did it, we heard feedback from people saying, well, why does this alliance have, a few more spenders and this other alliance doesn't have any? And those are some of the challenges that occur from that. And that's why, my biggest piece of advice to people out there is to just never, again, take everything kind of with a grain of salt or grain of sand in that situation where, again, unless someone is actually going to spend, right, do not take them at word, right, at face value, right? The biggest thing I've taken away and I've learned through my experiences is that until you see them physically spend, or you see chests that are coming in, gold chests or other, or you see their power, skyrocket or take a large enough leap on a per day or per week basis to essentially show you, right, visually that they're spending, right, then don't believe they're going to spend, right? There's no guarantee. Even if someone has spent in a previous kingdom and they might be what you would consider to be a whale, a kraken, a heavy or high spender, it does not mean that they are going to spend again. Doesn't matter what they tell you. Until they actually spend is when you will know. So trying to figure out who your confirmed spenders are, who is or who's not, if they tell you in DMs, oh yeah, I'm going to spend, just take it with a grain of salt, right? Again, as I say, grain of sand, you are, again, there's just no way to guarantee. It doesn't matter even if they showed you their bank statements. Why? Because they actually have to go into the game and select and press the buttons to actually purchase something. So again, always look at it that way. Never assume that someone is going to spend when they're not. And trust me when I say you will be in such a better position going forward, not only in your daily experiences, but in your expectations when it comes to going through the jumping process. And even if you're someone who plans to, do a project, or even if you're in a project right now and you're watching this video and you're like, damn, I actually do that. And let me point out a few other things here, because I actually might have to make 2 videos separately now, is that if you decide to do that, remember that there's also the chance that your players that have reacted to those in public channels could get poached. You might have a group that comes in and says, hey, we have 10 whales confirmed. We'll be able to get you into an alliance with 10 other whales, right, or 10 other heavy or high spenders. So again, that's one other area that makes it very difficult when you show that information publicly, because there's nothing stopping people from joining your project and getting past your verification, even if you have any, which that's a whole other topic. I don't really believe people should have verifications on it, because I just think you just lose more people that way when they have to jump through more hoops. But then on top of that, what's to stop people from internally within your project trying to collect whales or spenders to try and be in their alliance, right? Then you're kind of getting into the internal drama of it all. What's to stop individual members from messaging the players that they see have reacted to the higher spender tiers and saying, hey, is it cool if I join your alliance? Or, hey, would you like to come and join my alliance? Essentially, kind of what you're doing is you're putting the spenders on this kind of public pedestal, and there's just there's just quite a few unintended consequences that can happen from you publicly sharing that information. And even though I've only named what I have experienced as some of the highlighting points, it doesn't mean that other things can't happen that may negatively affect that player's experience prior to jumping, during the jump, or even after they get into the final kingdom because you have this information public. So my biggest piece of advice for those players that are out there is, especially if you're doing a project, do not have this information public. This to me is a big red flag, and if you are in a jumper project or you're considering making a project to to try and bring in new players, other people that want to restart and go to a new kingdom, you should never ask people if they're willing to spend. If they decide to spend, that's their choice, and then you just play it out kind of as is, right? One piece of advice I'll give you here is the best way to really do it, to always keep it fair, is you just distribute players evenly and equally across the board, whether you do it based on region or just based on when they come in. This way there's no bias and you can be objective in how you are distributing players, where you're just kind of doing it on like a universal or common denominator path. That is it for me. I'm definitely going to have to make another video to cover the other stuff that I said I was going to talk about, because that's definitely going to be enough for another video. But I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and it really hammers home on what I think is a really big part. And unfortunately, I see this happening in almost the majority, if not all, projects that I've come across. And so again, I hope this at least gives you some more clarity and an explanation. With that being said, that's it for me. I would love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below if you've ever experienced any situations that I brought up in this video. And yeah, until next time, later.